Since day one, there has been the fear of AEW befalling the dreaded WCW TNA syndrome, where they adopt so much WWE stuff that they start getting viewed as WWE light. And many were hoping that AEW makes sure to firmly maintain their own identity. But in an effort to do so, there have been some questionable points of All Elite Wrestling that might have been better off staying in World Wrestling Entertainment. And 7 of them are the topic of this episode. Because today, Dave knows 7 WWE talents who shouldn't be in AEW. First, let's explain the criteria for this list, especially since I do have to acknowledge that in today's day and age, it's really difficult to get someone who hasn't been connected to WWE in some way, shape, or form. So don't think of this as me saying that AEW needs to avoid anything that could be traced back to WWE in any way. Instead, look at this as a risk versus reward kind of scenario, where I'm weighing how connected a person is with WWE and how much value they can bring to All Elite Wrestling. And if, in my opinion, the former outweighs the latter, then they are up for some serious consideration for this list. And I'm not saying that I don't like any of these talents or that they aren't any good. Again, this is just done because AEW should look to avoid what happened to WCW and TNA once upon a time, as being too closely compared to WWE is what some say hurts a promotion in ways that it can never fully recover from. Now, with all that being said, let's get into the episode. Billy Gunn. While he may not be seen all that much, and I do think that helping out his son is a major part of why he's there, I still think that Billy wasn't a mandatory acquisition for AEW, as even during his time in TNA, Kip James was really always seen as the one Billy Gunn. Furthermore, with AEW hiring him as a producer and coach, I feel like he doesn't bring as much to the brand as his WWE affiliation burdens the company. Especially since, unlike other backstage personnel such as Dean Malenko and Arn Anderson, who have lots of experience prior to WWE, Billy, from his time as a smoking gun to a new age outlaw, has mostly been indoctrinated with the WWE style during his prime. And by adding him on in a backstage role, it's only going to make AEW more WWE-ish. Tony Shivani. Okay, so I know that he is barely associated with WWE, as many people often forget that he has commentated for the company. But even so, hiring people who are strongly associated with WCW is still a similar enough conundrum for AEW to avoid. And let's not forget that WWE did purchase WCW after all. In addition, even considering his bare connection to the House of McMahon, I still think that Shivani brings very little to AEW, as the last thing the company needs is yet another commentator, especially another play-by-play one at that. His only real purpose is to pop the old TNT crowd with nostalgia, and that is the exact kind of thing that All Elite Wrestling should be steering clear of, unless of course there's a substantial enough payoff, which Shivani definitely won't be providing. Vickie Guerrero. Here we have an opposite problem. While Vickie may merely have been making a guest appearance, I still think that she is so strongly associated with WWE that there was no point to bringing her on. While I do think that she deserves better than her screeching "excuse me" character that WWE turned her into, and I do relish in her getting the opportunity to extend herself beyond that, I don't think AEW was the place where it needed to happen. And with her mere minor cameo, I have to ask, what exactly did she bring to the company? Earl Hebner. While we're on the subject of WWE redemption, I have to say that, believe it or not, I do think that Earl's reputation has been tarnished a bit too much as a result of the screwjob. Yes, he is guilty, but it's not a stink that I feel needs to linger around him forever. But again, AEW shouldn't be his cleansing grounds, especially when they already have a great official with Aubrey Edwards, who is making a name for herself as an AEW ref. And while I do know that Hebner has been a great influence for Edwards, I still see him more as a lingering afterthought of the old world rather than a symbol of the new. Jack Swagger. While Jake Hager is a legit badass and a really solid technical talent in the ring, I have to say that I don't really see his place in All Elite. Putting him in the background and using him as the muscle of the inner circle is nice and all, but he really doesn't have much of a presence in the group. And remember, he is a former WWE World Champion, meaning that he does have a very strong association with the brand. But unlike guys such as Chris Jericho, Hager never really moved the needle in terms of ratings, offering very little return in exchange for AEW getting yet another WWE performer on their roster. Justin Roberts. Like many, when I think of Justin Roberts, the first thing I think of is he's the guy who got strangled by Daniel Bryan. And while I know that there is a lot behind that story, in the end, most fans will still associate Roberts with this moment and link that with Daniel Bryan's firing. Now, even though Roberts may not be to blame for this, and even though everything worked out for D. Bryan in the end, the point is that Roberts' most famous moment in wrestling doesn't come out of his announcing, but rather from an unfortunate incident in WWE, one that he'll probably never top. Which means that AEW is left with a WWE guy who is not most known by the masses for what they hired him for, but instead is most known for something that happened in the other company. And with all of the announcers out there in the indie scene, plus AEW being viewed as the super independent promotion, why hire Justin Roberts of all people when there are loads of other talents who could have filled that role? Furthermore, ring announcer is definitely not a position that requires someone with marquee value, thus making hiring Roberts an odd hire to say the least. Jim Ross. And finally, we have good old JR. Now, I know I may get heat for this, but allow me to explain. For many fans of the Attitude Era, they will tell you about the remarkable energy, passion, and emotion pouring out of Jim Ross's commentary that he put into every single match that he called. However, when you listen to him behind All Elite's commentary desk, it's clear that the passionate guy of old is just not the guy who's currently there. And look, I do sympathize with him and all that he suffered through, so of course his change in performance is perfectly understandable. But nevertheless, when you're choosing someone to be the voice of your company and you hire a guy who is the voice of WWF for an entire generation, it seems really perplexing that you would allow your brand to have the exact same guy, even though you're not getting the same exact quality. And in the end, getting a watered down WWE talent is the exact problem that WCW and TNA had, allowing a member of the past to phone in their performance while their promotion ended up even further in WWE's shadow. But what do you think? Who are some former WWE talents that you think AEW shouldn't have hired? Let me know down in the comments, and please make sure that you are still subscribed to this channel and that your notifications are working. Thank you so much for being here, and as always, Dave knows.